Welcome back to the Law School Toolbox podcast. Today we are going to be discussing the logistics of getting yourself set up for life at law school. Your Law School Toolbox hosts are Alison Monahan and Lee Burgess, that's me. We're here to demystify the law school and early legal career experience so you'll be the best law student and lawyer you can be. We're the co-creators of the Law School Toolbox, the Bar Exam Toolbox, and the career-related website Career Dicta. Alison also runs the Girls Guide to Law School. If you enjoy the show, please leave a review on your favorite listening app. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can reach us via the contact form on lawschooltoolbox.com, and we'd love to hear from you. And with that, let's get started.
Welcome back to the Law School Toolbox podcast. Today, we're talking about life logistics as you prepare to start law school. Well, Lee, this is a topic I will admit we've talked about several times, but why do you think it's so important?
Oh my gosh, it is just so important because time and time again, we hear from especially first year or sometimes second year law students that kind of getting things wrong can really derail your experience even before it starts. And that some of these kind of life things that come up in that first year, if they can be avoided. But some of these things that come up, if they can really cause you to not be able to study, not be able to get great grades, not be able to enjoy your experience. I mean, it can really derail you.
Yeah, I think it can just really detract from like the focus of what you actually want and need to be focusing on, which is your academics, like settling into this new life, making friends, all of these things. You know, if you don't have a place to live and you don't have a way to get to school, these things really can cause some serious problems. And the other part of this, I think, is sometimes setting all of this stuff up. I mean, I will admit I'm very, very guilty of this as a life pattern. Sometimes things take longer than you think they're going to.
Yeah, that's true. Like internet.
I'm just notorious for putting myself in these situations where I'm massively over-optimistic about how long some type of logistical thing is going to take me. And then rather than being kind of a pain, but, something you can sort of deal with, it becomes an absolute mess and very stressful and usually very expensive. And I want to help people avoid that.
Yeah, that's true. Especially like relocating. Oh my gosh, moving. Yeah. It doesn't matter how copious of an organizer you are. I mean, it doesn't matter how many lists you have. You're always the night before still putting stuff in boxes in some sort of, chaotic way.
Yeah. And I think some of that's normal, but there's also like a certain extreme you can take that to that I'm notorious for doing, of just really underestimating the time and energy that it's going to take me to get settled and like get set up and be ready to go. And I think that is the goal here. You want to be settled and ready when school is starting.
Yes, I agree. So I think our plan today is to kind of talk through some of the things that people need to think about. And whenever you think about setting yourself up to go to school, definitely the first thing that comes to mind is always housing. Like, where are you going to live? What's your life setup? I did have a friend, our second year of law school, who slept on the floor of my apartment for weeks because his lease didn't start when school started. And I lived in a very tiny apartment and he slept on the floor of my living room for like 3 weeks.
Yeah, that definitely happened. Yeah. I mean, my second year, we had an empty room in my apartment because our third roommate had transferred and that room was just standing empty because, of course, the housing department doesn't really tell anyone anything. And then one day someone just opened the door with a key and I was sort of like, who are you? And it was a very small person. She's very short, actually, with a very small suitcase kind of standing on our doorstep being, well, I live here now. They told me this is my new apartment. And she had come in as a first year and had been basically couch surfing for 3 or 4 weeks with friends because they didn't have a place to put her until they realized that this person wasn't in our apartment anymore. And so, that was obviously not a great situation for her to start law school in.
Right. Because it's overwhelming in the best of situations. So all this additional stress and exhaustion just makes it more difficult to focus on what you need to be focusing on.
Yeah. So I think obviously one of the very, very first things you've got to sort out is your housing. Is your school providing it? Are you getting it? Where is it? What is it? Can you work there or not? Is it safe? Are you going to feel safe walking around? Not every law school is in the very best location. So that's definitely something to think about. If you're not used to living in a city, like what is that going to feel like? if you're moving to New York, like, do you want a doorman building? Maybe you're definitely going to pay extra for that, but maybe it's like what you need to feel safe. Like, I think you've just got to think about all these options and really, not wait until the last minute, which I definitely did when I went to Berkeley for grad school, and I ended up living in like one of the student co-ops, and that was not a great start to school either.
Yeah, you also want to think about your roommate situation. Do you want to live with people? Do you not want to live with people? Are you coming by yourself? Yeah, are you coming by yourself, or do you come with a partner or children or pets? You have the more kind of complicated your life is, the more I think you need to think ahead about housing. But even if it's just you as an individual person, making sure that your housing setup means that you're going to be able to get some solid sleep, have a good place to study. You don't really want home drama that can be avoided. And so you want to set yourself up as well as you can. I mean, stuff is still going to happen, but, you just do what you can. I also think one of the things you have to realize, too, is that with the delays in the supply chain, like getting new stuff for an apartment could be challenging right now. I joke I have these 10-month couches that were supposed to take 8 weeks, and they took 10 months, which is great. They have finally arrived. They were Thanksgiving miracle, but that was just a small example. And a lot of law students aren't necessarily going to go out and buy a lot of furniture. But sometimes getting the things that you need and the timeline that you think you used to be able to get them doesn't exist anymore. So making sure that if you're not renting someplace furnished, and if you're not coming with furniture, if you're just showing up with a suitcase or a couple of boxes, making sure where your bed's going to come from. Like, are you going to have living room furniture? Are you going to be able to buy something secondhand to save money? I mean, all of that stuff is doable, but you need to have a plan. It's not as easy as it used to be to just get everything you need. I just ordered spatulas, and I got a note they would be here on June 15th. I ordered them in March.
Yeah, and spatulas. I read that IKEA is having some big supply chain issues too. So I remember we went over from New York, I think, to New Jersey for, to pick up some stuff at IKEA. And that might not necessarily be feasible these days. So I think that's a great point. You've got to really think ahead about what you're going to do and be flexible in terms of, maybe if your favorite color couch is not available, well, you might have to pick something else.
Yeah, you don't want to wait 10 months for your couch. But I'm sure you could go on Craigslist and find a couch, but that also comes with its own logistics, right? How are you going to pick up the couch? Do you have a pickup truck? Do you have to rent a car? Do you have a friend with a pickup? It's like all of this stuff, like you were saying earlier, it's like it sounds so simple. And then when you start to break down all of these little barriers to entry to get some of this stuff done, it can get overwhelming really fast.
Right, because just picking up a couch that you found on Craigslist could be an entire afternoon project by the time you coordinate with the person and you go and find a get around and you go and get it and you get the couch and then you bring it back and then you return the car and you find somebody to help you carry it. It's not going to be that'll take an hour. I mean, I would think it would take an hour in my mind, but I know it will take probably 3 to 4.
Yeah. Oh, even I had a friend, we were done with our baby glider and I had a pregnant friend. And so I said, why don't you come take our baby glider? And then she sends me this text that she's like, these are the dimensions of my boyfriend's car. Do you think the glider will fit in it? And I'm like, I don't know. What do you want me to do? You want me to go measure the glider? I was like, here are the specs online. I don't have time to go measure the glider. But we're all having to get creative to get stuff done.
Yeah. No, so I think you just got to think about all this stuff. And, moving obviously is another big thing. If you are moving to a different city, what are you bringing with you? Are you going to pay to ship it? How are you going to ship it? I mean, all this stuff has to be sorted out. There's a process and it's probably going to take a while and it's going to be expensive. And, you end up weighing all of these things about, should I pack my spatulas and pay to move them, or would it be better just to buy new ones when I get there? But wait, how long is it going to take?
Right. Be careful. You may not be able to get the silicone spatulas from Williams-Sonoma that you thought you could get before.
I will say I got 2 very acceptable spatulas recently when mine broke from Target that I went into the store and I bought them. So you'll probably be able to get something, but I will say they are not the high heat version.
Okay.
They don't go to 550 degrees or whatever, but I decided I could live with them for the time being because I needed some spatulas.
Yeah. At this point, I went ahead and we went to the store, got new spatulas, but still left the order because I'm like, I feel like I need to stockpile spatulas now. Like next to my KN95 stash are now my new spatulas, just because who knows when the spatula restock will happen. I think the other thing that a lot of times people don't think about when they're moving is getting rid of the stuff at your old place. So let's say you decide you don't want to take your furniture across country, or you don't want to, move certain things. You do need to have a plan to get rid of stuff.
Right.
Because
Which also
that is actually
will not be quick or easy.
No. And, depending on where you live, there can be great ways and organizations that you can hand stuff off to, but a lot of times that takes organization. So there's a organization in the county where I live that collects furniture in good condition for foster youth, which is so children and young families who have come out of the foster care system and are setting up their first homes. They let them basically come to this warehouse and shop for furniture for free to set up these homes. It's really amazing.
That's
I love
great.
it. I love sending, items that are not needed anymore. However, they don't have unlimited space, so they don't take every item. And they will only do drop off on 2 days a week. So you have to plan ahead if you want your items to go there. If they just need to go to the junk place, or they just need to be thrown out, that's another thing, but you still probably have to hire somebody to come haul them away. None of this stuff happens on 24-hour notice.
Right. No, I like to do Craigslist free stuff to give things away. But even then, maybe somebody will come that day, maybe not. I mean, who knows?
I know it took me 2 days to give my blender away on Nextdoor because people just didn't come to take my blender.
Yeah, that can also be a frustration. So, maybe you want to have a free sidewalk sale or something. But again, you got to plan around that. So, none of these things are insurmountable, but I think people do underestimate, I watched a documentary recently, and apparently the average house in America has something like 300,000 items in it.
Oh, that's horrifying.
That's a lot of stuff.
That's a lot of stuff.
And everything in your house has to, you have to do something with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, obviously if you're, in a small 1-bedroom, you probably don't have that many things, but you may still have literally 50,000 things.
Oh, that's anxiety inducing right now.
Yeah, I know. This documentary was called The Minimalists. So yeah, it definitely made me want to throw some stuff away.
Yeah. Yeah. I did actually just clean out a drawer of stuff that I hadn't opened or gone through in the 18 months that I've lived in my house.
Oh yeah. Well,
maybe I don't need anything in that drawer if I haven't opened it in 18 months.
I will admit I've moved boxes back and forth across the country unopened, some of which may still be in my garage. I think I've gotten all of them at this point, but there may still be there that I've literally paid to ship back and forth across the country and never opened.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So just think about this, really, I think give yourself a little time and actually try to be deliberate, and it will probably be in the long run, a much better process.
Yes. Another thing that folks need to think about is transportation wherever they're going to live. So are you going to bring a car? If so, how do you get it registered? If you're moving to a new state, do you have to change your driver's license? What's your parking situation like?
You need an appointment to do all of these things.
That's true. Do you have to get up, in San Francisco, you have to get these parking permit stickers that go on the back of your car if you don't have a parking spot?
Oh, Lee, guess what?
What?
I just renewed my permit yesterday in the mail. I got a letter saying that they're doing it by license plate now.
Oh, that's so amazing. Wow, what a big leap.
You won't have the stupid sticker.
Oh, that's nice. I hated those stickers. I really hated those stickers.
I know. So anyway, but you definitely, but the thing in San Francisco is you cannot get a residential parking permit unless you have registered your car to that address. They will not do it.
Yes.
And I would have to imagine changing your car registration to California right now is probably not a one-day process.
That's true. But I did used to work at AAA. And yes, I know it's hard to believe. One of my former jobs, I worked for corporate AAA. And one of the things that I learned was that at most AAA offices around the country, at least in California and Nevada and one other state, but you should check. You can often do DMV things like change your car registration at a AAA office and not have to go to the DMV. So you should Google that.
Which would be a huge benefit.
So Google it, find out what office is close enough, what DMV services they offer, and that can be a very fast way around. Great little tidbit back from my year that I worked at AAA corporate in San Francisco.
Yeah, because I think too with COVID, like more and more, I mean, I'm pretty sure you have to have essentially an appointment for almost anything with the California DMVs at this point. And like, I mean, when I was trying to get like my real ID or whatever, like they were booking up like months ahead of time.
I know. Yeah. It's not fun. And you can also look around and see, sometimes if you're moving to an urban area, if a DMV office like outside of that city is going to be less crowded. So you can.
Right? Didn't you go to Sacramento or Fresno or something?
Oh my gosh, I went to Sacramento once for my real ID because I could not get an appointment anywhere, and it was actually going to be faster to drive 2 hours to Sacramento and take into the appointment than it was going to be to spend half of the day in the DMV. At least I got to listen to audiobooks on the way.
Yeah. So point again.
I mean, maybe it wasn't the best for the environment.
Yeah, but these things take time. I'm pretty sure California at one point gave me a ticket because I didn't register my car soon enough when I moved to LA. So, again, like you just kind of need to think about these things. They also impact things like voting. Like if you change your license, like is that changing your voter registration? All of these things have consequences. And with transportation, maybe you don't need a car and that's great. And you can get by with like transit or bike share. But again, like you probably want to set up either some type of auto pay for your transit so that you're not constantly like looking for money, or like make sure you have that bike share. Or if you want a bike, like guess what else is also back ordered?
Yeah, it's so true.
Bikes.
I know. Bikes.
Yeah. So, think about where you might be able to get that before because I think this idea that like you can just walk into a store and buy whatever you want or order whatever you want on Amazon is not necessarily true right now.
Not for a lot of these bigger ticket items. It really isn't. Or my spatulas, which were not a big ticket item. And for some reason, that just really floored me. I know. But I bought some pans too. The pans came yesterday and the spatulas are just gone. Like there was just, and I love it. They send you the email with, it's like, your pans will be there next week, but your spatulas will be there in June. You're like, what?
Also, you're like, are you sure about that? Like, are you positive that like by the time you make them and ship them that's going to be our date? Because that seems like a little far in advance to be able to predict.
And really, Williams-Sonoma, do you really not have any spatulas like anywhere in the country? That's it? I don't know. I didn't do a deep dive into them. I went to Crate and Barrel and they had some and I just bought them there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with the OXO ones I got from Target. They have a nice feel in the hand, even if they might melt if I leave them on the stove.
Well, then just don't let them melt.
Exactly. I'm just going to be careful with them. I try to put them on like a little spoon holder on the side instead of like resting them on the pan because I know they might actually catch on fire. Right.
And this conversation is a total example of how you can get caught in the minutia of the tiny items when you're moving and setting up a home.
Exactly.
So... Yeah. Other things, utilities and internet.
Oh, God.
Internet's always a huge pain. Oh, my gosh. Yesterday, let's just talk about internet failures. Yesterday, I was teaching a group of students and Zoom crashed on me multiple times because my internet was unstable. I am so paranoid about my internet at my office that I run 2 types of internet. I have DSL and I have cable, and the cable went down first and then it switched over to the DSL. It was a nightmare. And it took me a while to get even that set up. So internet is just problematic. Sometimes you need repeaters in your house or your apartment to make sure that your bedroom gets good, solid internet. It takes some time. You gotta, but yeah, internet right now, I'm not pleased with my internet router.
Yeah, well, also, I mean, you might need to upgrade your router because the newer ones do work better. So, if you've been using one for like 5 years and bring it with you, that might not be the best one. You might want to spend the, $100 or whatever a router costs these days to actually upgrade to one that works. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, internet, notorious nightmare. Utilities, generally also a nightmare. You may just move into like something run by your school where none of this is an issue. But if you're going to be living off campus, you're going to have to set all this stuff up.
Yeah. And if you're going to be living with roommates, you need to make sure that you go in all understanding how you guys are going to divide up all of your, utilities and what everybody's paying and how everybody's going to pay each other. And are you using Venmo or whose name's going to be on the utilities? All of that stuff you're going to have to kind of do by committee.
Right. Yeah. So, probably best if every person in the apartment has like one set of utilities or something rather than one person having all. Just speaking from experience on that one. Probably don't want to be the person who pays for everything if you can avoid it.
Yes. So also cell phones. I mean, usually now you can move with your cell phone unless you're, going abroad or coming from abroad or something like that.
Right. But it may not work.
That's also not cheap. Oh, that's a fair point. Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. Like each location, I know that all the ads try to make it sound like, oh, we all cover the whole country, but that's just not true. Like even in Tahoe or something, like basically there's only one cell phone provider that works most places. So,
yeah.
And when I was in New York, like there were known dead zones around Columbia. Like certain companies literally didn't work because their towers had been on the World Trade Center. So like you got to kind of figure this stuff out and look at it. I mean, hopefully that's become easier, but again, like you kind of got to make sure that you have a working cell phone or you're going to be in a world of trouble.
Yeah. You also probably want to check out any kind of community activities that you want to take part in. Whether they're religious activities, do you want to join a book club? Do you want to do some sort of sports social club? Do you do a certain type of exercise that you need to join a tennis league or a CrossFit gym or any of that kind of stuff? You want to research that beforehand so you can have all of that set up and figure out how you're going to balance that with school.
Yeah, and I think that's a great thing to do is sort of figure out like what is going to be your outside of school like activity zone or like social area. And if you are religiously active, I think that's a great place to kind of like look to be hooked up with the community because all these things, you're going to need community for various things, whether it's just, for social reasons or even for like help. A lot of communities are willing to like invite you to do things or like help you out if you have kids or I mean, what if you have pets? Your pet needs like a dog walker.
Right.
So, all these things that anything that you're kind of interested in, with the exercise stuff, like you're going to use your school's gym. I mean, you're going to join a different gym. There was someone at one point who was a law student, I think in New York, who was blogging her way through all the free exercise gym passes in New York City.
I like that.
More power to her. She never paid for anything. And every week she went a different place. But, all these things that can kind of make you feel at home, I think are worth sort of spending a little bit of time, at least looking at some options, maybe reaching out to some places, is it a yoga studio, like whatever it might be that you're into, definitely worth doing.
Yeah. You also want to think about how you're going to feed yourself.
True.
It's always good to plan, of course, what your food plan is going to be, but especially if you eat a certain diet or you're really passionate about how some of your food is sourced. I know like you have a fish CSA.
Well, I'm disappointed with them these days and I'm actually canceling, but I have had it for a number of years and I'm kind of sad to lose it. But yeah, I mean, we had a CSA in law school that brought us vegetables until I think like the second winter where we're just like, I can't possibly face another turnip. But, like anything you can do to kind of streamline your intake of relatively healthy, not super expensive food, I think is worth doing.
Yeah. Different farmers markets, depending on where you live, can be a great way to shop. And even in different urban areas, some farmers markets are notoriously more expensive than others.
Right.
So finding out, where are the more affordable farmers markets. If you are gluten-free, make sure you know where you can get whatever your individual needs are for that. If there's a gluten-free bakery or if you have certain specific dietary needs, just doing a little research is going to make it so that you have access to whatever you need. But like most things, you have to do a little legwork. So.
Yeah, and probably just eating like, the pizza that you get for free every lunch is not going to end up in like the best place.
So much pizza. So much pizza. So much pizza.
I'm sorry, that's not really that good for you. Every now and then, totally fine. Every day, maybe not.
So much pizza.
Yeah, and I think along with that, I mean, while you're looking at your food options, you can also look for good cafes where like maybe you want to be able to do your work because that's a great question to ask yourself. Where are you going to work?
Yes.
Are you going to go?
Are you going to do it at the school?
Yeah.
Cafe, co-working space,
library,
offices,
your own desk, like who knows? But you need an answer to that question because probably several answers because you're going to be spending multiple hours every single day doing some type of academic work. Sorry to tell you that if that's a surprise.
It's true. And as you age, because you're not going to be necessarily 18 starting this experience like you did when you were in undergrad, it does matter sometimes under the conditions in which you work.
Absolutely.
Your ergonomics start to mean more. And do you need a laptop riser? I mean, my desk right now, I've got like the tray, and I've got a second monitor that's up on books, so it can be at the same height as my laptop riser that is like, so everything's kind of at the right height. And I mean, there are a lot of things you start to consider the more you work for longer periods of time.
Yeah, things like your chair and your desk setup become really critical, because otherwise, your body is just not going to be functional, and that's not going to be great.
Yeah. And then, of course, we have all the academic logistics, like when do you do your course registration? Where do you get your books? Are there options for getting your books that are at different price points? How are you going to keep track of all these things? Like when you're going to get your loan disbursements? You want to make sure that you are reading all of the communications coming from the school. I know that during these like times of transitions, the paperwork and emails can get lost in the shuffle. So you really want to make sure that you're staying on top of things so you know like what you need to do to be ready to get started.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are so important to read, and people don't necessarily read them, or they skim over them. But anything the school is sending you about like what you need to do to be registered, what you need to be doing to get your financial aid, like how all that's going to work, you want to make sure you're paying attention to it, and also probably have some system for tracking it, whether that's like a label in your email or you're sending it to somewhere else or whatever it is, because ultimately, you want to be able to go back in time and make sure like you actually got the money you were supposed to be getting. Or when you're, getting tax records and stuff, like all this stuff actually matters. And obviously you don't want to not end up being registered for classes because you didn't like pick a password on a website or whatever it is they've asked you to do, because people just expect that you're paying attention. So there's not going to be a ton probably of sympathy when you go in and you're like, oh my gosh, like I didn't see this. And they're like, well, we sent it to you. Did you not read that?
Yeah. Let's just talk about the beauty of like the Dropbox scan functionality on your phone for stuff like this. Yes, this is my basically new obsession as I try and go paperless, because I just find that life drowns you in paper and then you can't find anything. And so I've become pretty copious about keeping all of my personal stuff organized in Dropbox. And if you have Dropbox on your phone, if you open it up, it'll basically scan a document for you directly into Dropbox and let you save it to whatever file folder it is. So you could have, a law school orientation file folder, and every single piece of mail that maybe if they're still sending paper mail, you can just snap a picture with your phone, press save, and it just files it into your Dropbox. Poof. You don't have to open your computer.
That is a great idea.
It is just so magical. It works for so many things. And then you can just tear up the paper, put it in the recycling, and you don't have to worry about it. And then when you're like, where was that thing? It's safe in the cloud. It's magic. But I really love it. That's like one of my favorite things now. It's just so fast. You're just like, boom, done.
No, this is great information, because like this morning I got an invoice for something. Like somebody came and did some work on something in my water heater, and I got this invoice that I need to save for tax purposes. And I took a picture of it in my phone, but I did nothing with it yet because I just hadn't gotten around to it. I could have just sent that right to Dropbox.
Yes, you could have taken the picture.
We're not even being paid to say this.
I know. You can just be in your Dropbox app on your phone and you can just snap a picture through Dropbox. It has like a scan a document.
Yeah, I've seen that. I just never thought about what it was.
And then you go like click, and then it asks you like where to save it. You pick your file, and then when you do your taxes, ta-da, they're all there. It is.
Wow.
It's really
great.
Magical. So starting to create these tasks now, we also use Trello boards to track things, or the labels in your email, but really the Dropbox snap a scan. I don't even know what they call it, but it's stuff like that will just keep you organized in a very easy way.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of laptops and backups, obviously you need some type of laptop. You probably don't need to buy a new one if you have one that's kind of, reasonably functional, because you could always buy another one in a couple of years. Yeah. And then it would be fresher to take the bar and things. So I would say if you have a functional laptop, I probably wouldn't upgrade right now, but I would make sure you back up your work.
Oh my gosh.
And not manually. Just go ahead and install Dropbox or something else and make sure that your work is backed up. We cannot tell you how many times we've had people lose stuff because they weren't backing anything up.
I know. It's just, please.
It's so bad.
So bad. So bad. Just do it. Just figure whatever you do. And it's just got to be automatic on a regular basis. Save to the cloud, save to the cloud, save to the cloud.
Yeah. And like also never just have one. Sometimes people, I don't even know why they do this. They've told me they open a Word document and they make every edit in it. And in one case, like this person had not saved it the entire time.
Oh gosh.
I know. Like don't do that. Like, you know, if you have an important document, go ahead and save it and then save like draft V2 a day or two later so that worst case scenario, you're going to lose a little bit of work. I mean, there are all these processes you can think about, but just please think about it. Yeah. We are running way over time on this.
I know. So we are very passionate about our spatulas and our documents and our invoices. I know. It's been one of those days.
Speaking of money, I think money is another area people should spend some time thinking about just to say, okay, what can I automate here? And you also, this is a great time to cancel anything that you might not need because you're, you know, if you've been working and you have, you know, a really nice like cable plan and all this stuff, like maybe you don't really need that in school. Maybe you can get by with just like, you know, nothing or Netflix or whatever.
Right.
But for anything that you have to pay, I would say just automate that because you're going to be busy. You don't want to be paying like late fees for things you missed. And it's not something you need to be spending time on.
Yeah. I would also say another thing that if you can't automate certain things, make sure you set like calendar reminders. Like if you if you do have to send a physical payment on a certain date, whether through Venmo or whatever it might be, just set a reminder because you're not going to have the mental space to be like, oh, it's the 15th. You're not going to, I mean, like, no. So just automate as much of that stuff as you can.
Yeah, definitely.
But renter's insurance can be pretty important. Because maybe you haven't been renting for a while. Sometimes people have been homeowners and then switch back to being renters, but you want to have something in place in case something happens to your stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking like all these natural disasters like tornadoes and fires and all this stuff, like these things could happen to you. And the great thing about having renter's insurance is it's pretty cheap and it will actually like help you find other places to live and pay for it and things like that if anything were to happen.
Yeah, that's so true. You also want to make sure that your healthcare is set up, and you know that can be like any physical providers you need, and this includes like eye doctors, dentists, you know, like a long list of kind of the stuff that we kind of need to do to keep ourselves going. But I will say that I know that a lot of people right now are having trouble finding therapists because there's a mental health crisis going on right now, which I don't think is news to anybody. But if you do need mental health providers, you should talk to either your school and see if your school is going to provide you with those resources, or start looking early to try and get on a wait list if it's important to meet with somebody in person, or talk to your current providers and see if they can provide any sort of remote services. But you don't want to let that stuff lapse. Especially because law school is a really challenging time. And if you have kind of the scaffolding around you to help you kind of cope with the ups and downs of life, you don't want to lose all that scaffolding when you go do something very challenging.
Right. And I think sometimes people who struggle with things like depression or anxiety, that idea of like, oh, I have to like find a whole new person and this is going to be so overwhelming, like that can itself become a problem. So the sooner the better on this.
Yes. I was just listening to a podcast about like mental health Instagram, that there are these like mental health influencers where a lot of people are getting their mental health help. And I found that really disturbing and sad. I mean, I'm glad that some people are finding influencers that help them feel better. But if you really need mental health services, I really hope you can find someone to talk to.
True. I mean, I follow some therapists and things on Instagram, and like, yeah, most of them are putting out like pretty solid stuff. So, I mean, I can see it being helpful, but obviously it's not the same thing as actually having a therapist.
I mean, I think it's more that like people can't find a therapist. So they're like, well, you know, I will like
that's a problem.
turn to the faceless, or I guess it's like I'm faceless, but the Instagram. But it's true. I mean, it's not that some of that. It's probably better than nothing. But it was just made me sad that people are looking for support, and we as a community and a culture don't have the people and the services in place to get that support. But your school probably will. So your school should have student services to help with things like that. So just make sure that you figure it out, how to access to that help.
And I think if the school themselves can't help you, they can often do a referral or something that might get you ahead of the line. I mean, none of this is guaranteed, but they do have more resources than just an average person walking down the street.
Yeah. All right. If you've got kids and pets, they take a lot. Oh my gosh.
Talk about logistics.
Talk about logistics. So, I mean, if you've got, where are they going to go to school, or are they going to have some sort of childcare, daycare, preschool? Are you going to have a nanny, part-time, babysitters, whatever you need for your kids' life setup? That usually doesn't happen fast. Even if you have a pup, like a puppy dog, they also sometimes need daycares, especially if you're going to be gone for long stretches of time. So they might need a dog walker or somebody to check on them. And you oftentimes need backup plans, because if COVID has taught us anything, is that sometimes life happens and then you're out of commission for a week or two, or the people who take care of your kids are out of commission for a week or two, or your kids got a COVID exposure and they can't go to school. Like, there are lots of things that happen. And so you have to have kind of plan B, C, D, E, F.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've learned nothing. I think plan A is not really the only plan anyone should have about much of anything at this point.
No. We have talked about this on other podcasts, but you need to make sure you have the clothing that you need. And although you can wear whatever you basically want to school, you are going to need clothing to go to professional events. So you need to make sure you have a professional wardrobe. And we can link to some of those podcasts where we talk about kind of what to wear in greater detail.
Yeah, definitely. And also think about seasonality, what clothes you need now, what are you going to need for the winter? Because I learned when January came and I didn't have any warm clothes in New York City and it was below freezing all the time, they'd already moved on to spring clothes at that point. So I think that's becoming less of an issue, but it is definitely something to think about, because you don't want to be the one who can't buy a jacket in New York City in the middle of a blizzard because they've already sold them all.
That's true. I did once have to Amazon Prime some snow boots in New York in April because nobody was selling snow boots anymore and it was snowing.
Oh God, by April they were fully into fall basically.
Right. and I was like, but I didn't know it was going to snow and I don't have snow boots. And they were like, sorry.
Yeah. So I think, just think ahead around that a little bit. I think the key takeaway here is just anytime you can set up a system to make your life easier, that is probably something you want to do. But setting up that system beforehand usually takes a bit of time and effort. Lee, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I'm a big fan of the systems. My life has gotten more and more complicated over the years. I rely more and more on systems. And I think that anything that you can automate, so other things to consider would be depending on whether or not you want to use Amazon, but, subscribe and save, or if you use a specific type of product that you can just have delivered on a regular basis. Anything that you can do to kind of lighten your load on these little life tasks, I think will just allow you to be more focused and have just less of that busy work anxiety. So I'm a big fan of the systems.
Yeah, the other thing I would say, I'm becoming more and more a fan of setting the appointment for something and then forgetting about it. So this morning I went to the eye doctor, which was an appointment I set up probably a month ago. And at that time, I didn't really feel like going to the eye doctor, but I was like, well, I'll just set it up for a few weeks from now. And then it showed up on my calendar and I went. But having taken that first step is what made me get new contacts that now I'm pretty impressed with.
Yeah, that might make your life better. And if you were reading all day at a desk because you were reading chapters and chapters of cases, it would be even more critical.
Yeah. So I think, and I know I have a haircut in a couple of weeks that I think I set up 6 weeks, a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I think that, for me at least, that makes it easier to do things that I kind of know I should do, but I'm not really in the mood for. Just I'll just set the appointment.
True.
And, then it comes and I'm like, oh, right. Okay. I'm doing that thing. Great. And just, whatever.
If it's on my calendar, it must get done.
Right. Exactly. There's a reason the dentist sets you up for 6 months from then when you leave.
It's true.
All right. Well, before we finish up, we wanted to take a second to let you know you can check out our Start Law School Right course for incoming law students. It's on our website. It's on demand, and it includes feedback from one of our awesome tutors. So you can check it out. You can feel free to contact us if you have any questions, and it's done at your convenience, so you can fit it in around your packing. If you enjoyed this episode of the Law School Toolbox podcast, please take a second to leave a review or rating on your favorite listening app. We'd really appreciate it. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to reach out to Lee or Allison at lee@lawschooltoolbox.com or allison@lawschooltoolbox.com, or you can always contact us via our website contact form at lawschooltoolbox.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk soon.